I think I was born on Edgemont, a house on Edgemont. And you know, at that time, you were born in a house. You had a midwife. My mother had a midwife. And I was born in a house. But I don't remember anything about it. The first house that I remember was on Flournoy. Flournoy in Loomis. That's the first house that I could remember. And I was a preschooler yet. I wasn't even 5 years old yet.
What was that neighborhood like?
Same neighborhood as all of them are. It was all Italian, immigrants. We're all in the same boat.
And then, how old were you when you moved?
We moved to Loomis. Maybe I was 6, 7. Because I started school at Loomis and near Taylor, which was only a mile and a half from Flournoy.
So the first house was on Flournoy and Loomis.
The first one that I remember.
The first one you remember. The first one was on Edgemont. The next one was Flournoy and Loomis.
Yeah, Flournoy and Loomis.
And then when you were about 6 years old,
we moved further south, about a mile and a half or so south.
And why did you move, do you know?
On Loomis. Well, because my grandmother lived in this one building. It was a 3-story building, and the apartment was open next to ours on the 3rd floor.
Which grandmother now?
I only knew one grandmother and one grandfather. The other two were in Italy, and those are my mother's mother and father. And that's where they lived. So we moved on the 3rd floor, next door to them, with a porch in the back that we could run back and forth to each apartment.
And what are the block numbers around that neighborhood?
That address was, I lived at 1115 South Loomis, and my grandmother lived 1113 South Loomis.
And then Loomis is how far west? What block number?
Loomis is, I would say, around 1400 west, at a couple blocks west of Racine. That was the kind of a main street.
Where did your father work? How far?
My father worked at Ganellas, which it's not that far, but in those days, taking a streetcar was far enough. I'd say 3 miles away, 3-4 miles away.
And then so you were there when you were 6 years old, and how long did you live there?
I was in 3rd grade. I was going into 3rd grade when we moved out.
And why did you move out?
And my father thought the neighborhood wasn't the right place for us to grow up in. And he decided that we'd move far out of that type of environment.
What happened?
We moved out to what they call the Columbus Park area, which is maybe about half a mile away from Oak Park, which was the elite area. But our area was still Chicago.
But back on the Loomis, there was an event where there was a bum there. on the street?
Which bum? There's a lot of bums.
I don't know. There was a guy there.
You mean a guy that was drunk?
Guy that was drunk, and a guy came up and hit him.
Oh, that guy. He was actually he was a young guy. I thought he was big, but I would guess that maybe he was 16, 17 years old. And he saw this drunk sitting on a bench, minding his own business and talking by himself. And he says, fix him. And he goes upstairs and he comes out with one of those little revolvers. They're like a magazine type gun, not one with the long pistol type.
Yeah.
And he takes the gun, turns it over, and gives him a whack on the head. The poor guy goes like this. Whoa, blood. And that guy says, I fixed him. He took off and went home and put the gun away.
So, but it's that kind of environment that Nanu didn't want
Yeah.
you guys to grow up in.
That's right. But you know, let me tell you something. Everyone respected an area. They called it the gangway. This 3-story building, and then there's you enter a gate and you go in there. That's what we call the gangway. But next door there was another 2-story building, and back of that was another couple of story building. So, and we had a little empty lot there in the back that all of us, all the neighbors, played in, the kids. And that was like a sanctuary. I mean, you talk about shooting and guns and hoods and everything. They never bothered that area.
This is like a common area between all the buildings in that little area.
Yeah, that was the family area.
When you moved out west, did your grandmother stay there?
Yeah.
I bet she didn't like the idea of you guys moving.
No, she didn't. She didn't let it known.
Yeah, so
She didn't like it.
And then who else lived with her?
Her husband, that's my grandfather.
His name?
His name was Felice. Felix.
Yeah. And,
But-
and this is your grandmother, Maria?
Maria, yeah. And we call her Nana. And my aunt, Mildred, her name is Amelia. I don't know how she got Mildred out. They got Mildred out of it. But she was single. And I had another aunt there. And she died of polio while we were next door, living next door here. Evelyn was her name. And oh, that was a sad affair. But wait a second, my sister wasn't even born yet. She was born in Flournoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was a little teeny baby when we moved to Loomis.
So let me get it straight now. Your grandmother, and this is your mother's mother,
Yeah,
and Mildred and Evelyn were living there,
Yeah.
with Felix,
right.
and who else?
That's all.
And then Evelyn died of polio.
Right. I think it was polio. I don't know. She's only 18, 19 years old. I don't know if it was polio or some incurable disease of that time. Which later on, I guess we got vaccinated and stuff that prevented us from getting that stuff, whatever it was. Whatever that was for her.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is.
All right, then we moved
Let's see what's
to
that right now.
Columbus Park area. like
Corn
I said.
on. It rained like heck.
All right, so Columbus Park. Why did he pick that way out there?
Well, there was a couple of reasons. First of all, he wanted to get out of congested area. When we moved out to that area, it was on Harrison Street, which were a bunch of stores, small, privately owned stores. That's all there were. There's a little bakery shop, a little dry goods store, a hardware store, a fish store, another bakery. There was the barber. Where all this is a business block.
What did you think when you learned you were going to move out there?
I didn't like it. I didn't like the idea of going out there. No, we didn't like the idea, especially since we had to travel so far. It was the end of the streetcar line. We had to travel so far because every Sunday, without fail, we went to see our grandmother. And it was quite a long ride. I'd say about 45 minutes.
So that was straight out west.
Straight out west. Let's see, I'll tell you how we used to go. We were close to Roosevelt Road, my grandmother's house. She was 1100 south and Roosevelt Road is 1200 south. So we used to walk from there to Roosevelt, take a streetcar, and go westward to Polina. You had to go the way the streetcar would be. Every road didn't have a streetcar. You had to go the route of the streetcars, and you got to transfer. That meant that you get on there, went to Polina, then we went northward to Harrison, which is about 1200 south to 600 south.
Harrison.
Yeah, that's only 6 blocks.
6 blocks.
Yeah, and we transferred and we went west to the end of the line. Well, 1 block from the end of the line. The end of the line was Central, and we lived near Lotus, which is 5500. In fact, my address was 5502 West Harrison. And that was a little bakery store. It turned out to be kind of a little, we bought bakery goods from a baker, Jacoby's Bakery, and sold them. Rolls and sweets and bread, and they would be fantastic, fantastic. They made things with real butter, and it was Danish stuff.
But your mother ran the store.
My mother used to get up early in the morning, and my father used to go get this bakery goods. We had a little truck. He'd go get about a mile away, he'd drive, get the bakery goods, put it in there, and we'd open up the store. It was a storefront, and we lived in the back.
All one room, or
it was all partitioned. Our rooms were partitioned by 1/4 inch plywood. We only had really 2 rooms in the house. The bathroom was way in the back, which had walls, real walls, plaster, and the rest of the house was partitioned with plywood. The plywood went up maybe about 6 feet, but the ceilings were about 12 feet. If you can picture all of that. And the bathtub was next to the washroom, but that was partitioned. There was a big bathtub in there. And even the store, separating the store from our apartment, that was partitioned. So, I mean, there was no privacy in that place. And my mother used to say, "Shh, customers coming. Don't yell." And then it turned out that after this, my father put up shelves in there, and he used to go to the market downtown, Randolph Street Market. See, remember that too? And he'd pick up gallons of oil, jars of like tomatoes, cans of tomatoes and all that. It was like a, I don't know what kind of a store do you call that? Almost like a delicatessen. You know, but we didn't serve any foods. But we sold, and that was a few pennies, you know, you make a few pennies in those years, and he worked for Ganala yet.
He continued to work.
He continued to work. In fact, he was working nights, and he'd get home at 4 o'clock and get about an hour's sleep and go pick up the bakery goods. And then he'd go back to sleep, and then he'd have to, that was the morning stuff. You see, the morning stuff was just rolls and bread. Then at 10 o'clock, he'd go pick up the layer cakes, the eclairs, the cream puffs. Everything was fresh every day. There was no stale. There's no, like the next day you sell it. Everything was sold. We knew how much we were going to sell. Hey, at least they figured it out. The first summer, I didn't move we moved, I think like we got out of school and we moved out west, but I had to stay with my grandmother. I had something. I had the measles or something. And yeah, I think I had the measles. Well, I didn't want to give it to my little sister. But I don't think that was it. Because I stayed all summer, and they felt that this moving away would be bad for my grandmother and my grandfather, so they left me there, you know, to keep them company.
Yeah, see, that's what I was saying. How did they feel about it, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think that's what they did. Now, I didn't move out to Harrison Street there until September, when we started school, and I entered 3rd grade out there.
But before you moved out to Harrison, what was that first ride out to Harrison on a streetcar like?
You know,
what was going through your mind?
I'll tell you the truth, I don't remember that part of it. I don't know why.
You said you were, I think the last time you said this, you were going out there and you say, geez, this is out in the farmland.
Yeah, but yeah, this is I remember the first, yeah. But that was around September though. That I remember this, because we'd be riding on the streetcar, and I always had to ride way up in the front, otherwise I'd get sick. I got sick every time I got on that damn streetcar. I'd throw up. So, but if I went to where the guy, the engineer that drove it, I used to get air out there, and I felt better. So my brother and I used to go there, and Ma used to sit with Elsie in the regular seats. But there was an area when we passed, I think it was Cicero, it really became wide open, 4800 West, and you could smell the grass. It's the first time I ever smelled grass or anything growing. And we really got to love it. Said, boy, smell the fresh air. That city, that's bad. There were a lot of things that the kids that we started playing with, they were more fair-minded,
Out in the west.
Yeah, out in the west. In fact, we were so competitive that anybody we played with, when we played ball, they were our enemies, and we hated them. That's what we learned down there. But we got here. I remember I got a hit, and this guy on the other team, he comes up and pats me on the back. He says, "Nice hit." And I was surprised. I said, "How come? I mean, this guy is on another team." So, you know, we learned that that was the right way. So there was a lot of things that we said, I wouldn't go back there for anything, because we used to go back there every Sunday. And we saw how our old friends lived, and they were still really in the same, they never grew up, as far as we were concerned.
Yeah.
We were growing up. We felt like, hey, this is the way to live, and we love it, because we love the big empty lots. Here on the Loomis Street, we had that little thing that you hit the ball and you break a window next door. It was always that kind of a thing. Here we have big empty lots, and we cleared all the lots ourselves. We cleaned them up, made nice infields out of it, and we'd go out there and practice during the summer.
What was the address of the Harrison house? How far west was that?
5502 West Harrison.
5502.
That was 5500 West. As I say, 1 block away from Central, and there's where Columbus Park was. That's another thing, public park. Who ever heard of a public park? They had swings, they had game rooms. You go in there and they provided you with ping pong tables. In fact, me and Angelo, there was a little game that we liked. On Saturday mornings, we'd go there and help this guy who had to clean up all the bait. He took care of everything there. But you know, he used to solicit kids. He said, you know, come over and help me put these things together, and you got crack at the first game. And we'd spend there about 2 hours playing this little hockey game.
Was it lever hockey?
No, it's like a pool. I don't know what. It was like a pool, and you'd hit these little like checkers, and you try to go in the pockets. You hit one checker, and it goes in the pocket. I don't know. I never saw that game after that anymore.
So you moved out there when you were going into 3rd grade, and then
I hated school.
well,
I hated school because I never knew what the heck the teacher was talking about.
when did you learn English?
That's I really didn't know English until we moved out.
Well, what about when you were in 1st and 2nd grade? Didn't they speak English?
Yeah. But we were all in the same boat in that area. They were all from immigrants. We were all Italians. And you got that little picture of 2B there?
Okay.
I got a picture of me there.
Where? Yeah.
And with the class. And then my teacher,
yeah.
my teacher's name was Miss Sweeney. I remember that. But you know what? She was a good person. She knew, you know, that we didn't understand everything, and I don't even remember that I could even read.
You were good in math, though, huh?
Was always good at math, yeah. When I went to this May school, oh, I was so far behind in the reading and the English, and
May School was the one out west.
yeah, and they had a strict principal. Wow, Miss Offenlock. She wore a gray flannel dress that went high on her neck, Every day she looked the same with that gray dress. We called her the warden.
This was at when. So, give me a time frame here. How long did you live on Harrison?
Long time.
So you went to Mason.
I was in high school. I was, I think, about third year of high school. And then my father bought a house.
And that's why he bought that bakery, so that he can save for a house.
Of course. I think our house, first house, was under $3,000. He saved and saved and saved until he had the down payment, maybe $1,000, whatever it was. Of course, we had a mortgage.
Well, but before we go to there, when you were going to the May school in third grade, and then you eventually got up to the rest of the kids with English.
Yeah, oh yeah. By the time I got to 8th grade, I was pretty sharp, because I remember this one teacher sat everybody according to averages. She averaged everything, all the grades that you got, tests, grades. And I was sitting, like there were 6 rows, and I was sitting in the second row somewhere, middle of the second row or something. So that was pretty good. I wasn't the smartest guy in the world, but I probably was the best mathematician in the room. Because I'll never forget, this one teacher says, evidently she thought that I was very low in an IQ. Tell you why. Because they gave us an IQ test when we were 3rd grade, or I don't know when it was, and I must have scored low. Because they let it out somehow that I wasn't too brilliant. But the other kids, they used to copy off of me, and they couldn't understand what they're talking about. But I was really insulted when this one teacher, well, here, guess who scored the highest in the arithmetic test? Everybody's going, oh. And I thought to myself, I probably did. Orlando. I says, yeah. I acted like I was surprised. But why did she expect Orlando? Why did she expect me not to be the best? She didn't even know that they were copying from me. And then I got into 8th grade, and she had it in for me because she hated my brother. Dampier. Even though I was doing all the work, I was quiet, I did everything, she tried to nail me a few times and she couldn't. And she came out with, no, even Gagliardi's got a better opening than this. See? Yeah, I got news for you. I guess those records followed me. And in high school it didn't matter. No one looked at records. My first grades in high school were 3 S's, superiors, that's the highest, and 1 excellent in my major subjects. And all S's. And I made the what they call the super honor roll.
So, let me ask this: what did you have for lunch each day?
You're talking about in grammar school.
In grammar school,
we had 4 sandwiches and 1 dessert sandwich. 5 sandwiches. The dessert sandwich was always a jelly sandwich. The other sandwiches were She'd make veal cutlets or all kinds of big with Italian bread. Fresh Italian bread that my father used to bring home from Ganella Baking Company. And we were qualified to eat lunch at school because we lived 1 mile away from school. You had to be a certain distance, otherwise you had to go home to eat. And when there was not enough time between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock to go home and come back. And although we did that a lot of times, I used to run home and eat and then run back in the summer months. But in the winter, we used to bring our lunch. And it was always one of these big shopping bags. I had my lunch. And then on top of that, we had a fruit and a piece of cake or something, another dessert. We ate, and we were always, my brother and I were always the last ones done, because we were eating so much. But I'll tell you a story. You want to hear the story, I know. There was a lunch monitor that took care of the lunchroom, and he was, you know, maybe 7th or 8th grade.
And you were how old?
So I was about this time, maybe 4th, I don't know, 3rd, 4th, and Joe was 4th, 5th. When we first got there, it wasn't too long after.
And was the neighborhood Italian neighborhood or?
No, this neighborhood was a completely mixed neighborhood, but there were like the Greeks, and they stuck with each other pretty much, the Greeks. The rest, there were Italians, Irish, Jews, and other nationalities. But it seemed like...
It was a German neighborhood, no?
Some German, yeah, all of them. They're all a mixture of everything.
Immigrants or no?
Not, they may have been immigrants, but they got here a lot earlier than my father got here. See, I would say that my father got here in the 20s. My mother and father got here in the 20s, and maybe they got here before that. But they knew how to speak better English than my father did. My father spoke broken English. So what I was...
You were the lunch monitor.
Oh yeah, getting back to the lunchroom. My brother and I had finished eating, and with these Italian sandwiches. Now this is down in the basement. That's our lunchroom.
On the floor.
We had, all they had is seats, not seats, but bench, a big bench against the wall. And we sat down there, put the lunch on our lap, and ate. Like I say, the other kids, they'd bring 1, 2 sandwiches, they wouldn't even finish them. And it'd be a silver cup bread or Wonder bread. It was a soft American bread that never made any crumbs. And so they were cleaner. When we got done, the 2 spots that we sat in were full of crumbs on the floor. So the lunch monitor comes up and says, "Hey, you got to clean up your crumbs." And so my brother says, "All right, you got a broom?" He says, "I got no broom. You clean it up with your fingers." He says, Joe says, "And this dirty floor?" He said, "You're the lunch monitor. You clean it up. Come on, Len." And we went outside. So comes 1 o'clock, the bell rings. We're in our seats. The bell used to ring at 1:45. I'll never forget. Then you line up, and boy, you line up like military style in that school. And you're outside, and then the piano inside starts. Some kind of a march. And we used to march in quiet. You couldn't say a word. and the first floor would peel off, second floor would peel off, third floor would peel off. And you got into your room. By that time, it was about 5 minutes to 1. When the 1 o'clock bell rang, class started. Well, the 1 o'clock bell rang, and I was in my room, and here comes a little messenger, says to the teacher. So the teacher calls me and says, Orlando, report to the office. I know you want to hear this story. You've heard it a million times. So I go down to the office, and who's there but my brother was standing there, and this assistant principal is behind the desk, and she's got eyes like this, and she's looking at us, and she's talking. She's scolding us for leaving the crumbs, and she's doing all the talking. We're not saying a word. She doesn't ask questions or anything. She's reprimanding us for dirtying up the floor and for not cleaning and for being rude to the lunch monitor. Anyhow, she's talking and talking and talking like this, and I look up like that, and I'm thinking that she's talking to him because he's the older one. You know, so I look up, and he looks at me, my brother looks at me, he says, man, she's talking to you. I said, she's talking to you. And we both look at her, and she said, I'm talking to you. And we looked at each other, we broke up laughing. And she couldn't stand it anymore. She said, go back up to your class.
Classic. She had a wandering eye.
Yeah.
So you lived in that house, let me count. If you were a sophomore or a junior in high school when you moved to the house that your father bought, you were in there for 8 years.
Oh, we were there a long time, yeah.
About 8 years, it seems.
Yeah, good 8 years. But you know, the house that we bought was only 2 blocks away from there.
Yeah.
This was a...
Yeah, but it was a house.
Yeah.
And you had rooms.
It was a house, not only that, it was a residential street where this bakery was a business street. And the streetcar ran right past our store. Oh, I'll tell you stories about living in there. I remember next door, the store on the corner was the drugstore. It was right next to us. And then on the other side was a drive-in store. Well, in this drugstore, they were always being robbed. And how they used to get in, they'd cut a hole in the roof. Because of the roof, those roofs were made of tar. I used to go up there a lot of times on the roof, climb up there. They were made out of tar, and then the ceiling of all the stores, I don't know what, it was like a tin, but a bunch of like a yard. They were in sections like, and they'd have snips and they'd cut through this tin. And I don't know how they got in there, but they used to go in there and steal cigarettes and whatever was valuable. And we used to hear, in the middle of the night, we used to hear this. So, and then the next morning, we know, you know, what are we supposed to do? You know, we heard them.
Did you have a phone?
Yeah.
You couldn't call the police?
Yeah, I think we called the police. I think we called the police, but the police always came late. That's what happened. But I'll tell you one time, across the street from us, right across the street was a gas station. And next to the gas station was a garage that housed cars. In other words, we used to rent a spot in there. You couldn't park on the street all night. So we used to rent a space in there for our little truck, our bakery truck, and everybody did. They had cars or trucks or whatever, and they had a little spot. But we knew the guy, the night watchman there. One night, this guy came by, and he was lighting. We had awnings in those years to put down the awning when the sun came in, so that the bakery goods out there wasn't, you know, dried out the bakery goods that was out in the window. There's a window displays out there, and then all of our layer cakes and everything was out in that window. Well, the awning was let down during the day. At night, with the ropes, I'd pull it up, roll it up. This one guy came by, and he was throwing fires, setting all the awnings on fire. There were about 3 or 4 of them that were on fire, but the guy that was watching called us up. He says, "Your awning's on fire." So my father runs out there with his underwear. We're putting out this thing. So the guy yells. He says, "There's a guy there. There's, you see him at the end of the block? That's the guy." And my father runs with his underwear. He goes after him, and he grabs him by the neck, and he drags him. And this guy was like about 6'2", but he was a thin guy. He drags him all the way back, and he says to Joe, "Joe, you don't move," he said. "Go get to my gun now." And Joe went and got the gun. He had the gun, you know. We called the cops, and the cops came and took this guy. I don't know whatever happened to him, but that was one of the little incidents that happened.
What was the name of the bakery?
Orlando's Bakery.
On Harrison.
On Harrison, oh yeah. My father said, "We're going to call this." I was his favorite, you know. We're going to call this Orlando's Bakery.
What did Uncle Joe think about you being his favorite?
Oh, he didn't care. He was, you know why? Because he was always doing things mischievously wrong. He used to, one time, he's on Florida Street, he stole a $20 bill from Marco Bar. And he went down to Shorty's and cashed it. And then he brought up in the shoebox, he put it in our shoebox, $19. And he had $1 to spend. And here's the way he got away with it. He threw the $1 down, and he says, "Hey, Len," he said, "look at that, I found $1. So that, you know, he would.
You authenticated it.
I would. Otherwise, I would have asked him, "Hey, but don't tell Ma anything about it." He used to go spend a nickel here, a nickel there, until he got rid of that $1. But here's what he also said. I went in there. I don't know if he told me, but I went in there. Our Kumara says, "You know, Kumar, there was $20. $20 was a heck of a lot of money in those years. I lost $20. So when I left your house, did you see any?" "No." My mother says, "No." Anyhow, somehow I went in there in this shoebox, and I said, "Hey, wow, look at all the money."
Whose shoebox? Wait a minute.
There was a shoebox, one of our old shoeboxes in a closet. I don't know if my brother said, "Go in there and see what you see." I don't remember. I was a little guy. And I went in there and I found all this money and I gave it to them. And my mother said, go ahead, look, there's got to be one more dollar. I got $19, you know. Well, it was that dollar to eat, you know. And so my mother naturally called up and said, you know, I found your money. I don't know if, but oh boy, did my brother get it through. Of course, you know, my father, you know, what are you? He got down to the river, he tied my brother up on the boat, on the bed. And he gave him the scrap. And they never bothered me because I wasn't, they knew that I didn't have anything to do with
it. You came and said, look what I found. And there's more.
Yeah. Really at Lexington.
When did you start playing the horn?
In the bakery. Oh. I started playing.
And why did you pick that horn?
Yeah, I'll tell you. Number one, I used to go to weddings when we were little kids. And at Italian weddings, they always threw confetti and they added a few pennies in there too. And there'd be times there in the dance hall. And they always had a big band. Saxophones. 3, 4 saxophones, trumpets. They always had a big band at these weddings. They had a stage. And somebody always, when they would be dancing in the dance hall, they'd throw these confettis and everything. And I used to look, and I thought they came out of the saxophone. And I tried to spot them. How the heck are they doing that? They get by so fast. But some big guy is always throwing from somewhere, unknown place. Anyhow, I looked at the saxophone. Maybe that's why I thought I liked the saxophone. Because I thought that they got rid of the pennies that way. And the confettis. But there was a newspaper stand right in front of the drugstore, right in the corner of the drugstore, which is next door to us. And this old guy, Tom, used to get out there early. Oh man, he'd come in the store and warm up a lot of times in the winter. And not only that, Ma used to fix some sandwiches. And he'd sell newspapers. They were 2 cents for the Tribune. 2 cents, Morning Tribune.
Chicago Tribune.
Chicago Tribune. There was the Daily, there were 3 papers. They wasn't called the Sun Times, just the plain Times at the time, and the Daily News. 3 newspapers in Chicago.
Oh my God.
Anyhow, this guy got sick. He got sick somehow, and his son, this guy's name was Tom Ferroni, and his son, who was a musician, I found out he was a professional musician, played saxophone. And he had to come over and take over the stand. So he used to get out there, spend a few hours out there to keep that, because, you know, that was kind of that was his livelihood, this Tom. The newspaper stand. He was out there all day long, selling newspapers, the morning paper and the afternoon paper. Even on Sundays, he'd come out there and get the Sunday paper, which was a dime. That was the expensive paper.
Did you guys get the paper?
No, we'd buy a paper every once in a while from Tom, yeah. It wasn't a steady thing. Nobody could afford a paper every day. But, you know, my brother played accordion. He used to take lessons from Andy Rizzo. And my father had to take him downtown every week on Saturday. And every week it'd be the same story. He always had a bad lesson. And my father winds up giving him a boot and a keister out of the office. Because I went there a couple of times with them, you know. It was at Kimball Hall. He had his studio there.
He had a bad lesson, how come? Because he didn't work on it?
He never practiced. They never wanted to, he practiced his own kind of stuff. He didn't want to practice his scales and assignments. He'd always come out, Mr. Gagliardi, bad. My father had to spend $2 a lesson. That was a lot of money. Anyhow, Joe knew Joe Ferroni, the son of Tom, who played the saxophone. He was old. He wasn't old. He was maybe 30 years old at the time. He knew that Joe played accordion. He used to hear him, you know, so we got interested, and I'd go out there and talk to him all the time. I'd spend a lot of time talking with him, you know, finding out, you know, what his job was, what he did, and how he played the saxophone. And I told him, I said, boy, I'd like to play the saxophone. So he got to talking to my father. He said, you know, your son wants to play saxophone. He says, why, I got an old saxophone down the basement. He says, it's pretty good. He says, you're going to have to get a couple of keys fixed up. I'll get them fixed up. You pay for it, and you can use it. And it didn't cost much, a couple bucks, I think, to fix a couple pads. And I started taking lessons from him. It was in 8th grade, 7th grade. I was 13 anyhow. I started taking lessons from him with the soprano. And it was straight, and I was used to, that's a weird, so, you know, and he had the alto and the tenor, regular curved. He said, well, you know, this is just for you to get started. If you like it, he says, your father will buy you an instrument. So he gave me the first lesson. Foundation of Saxophone Playing by Ben Verican. Today, I would still recommend that for a starting book. Out of all the books, there was another fat book called The Universal, which I went through later that I don't think was as good. But he gave me a page and a half or something. He said, you take this, practice this week, then I'll see you next week. So I went home and I went through about 10 pages. I practiced for about 3 hours the first day. I went through about 10 pages and I had those 10 pages down packed. And I went there, he said, all right, show me what you did on your lesson. And I played, and I said, well, I played more. He said, yeah, well, play for me. And I played, and I kept on going and going. He says, how did you learn how to do all that? I says, well, it says right here what to do. I says, I followed the directions and everything. And he told my father, he says, boy, this guy is really going to be something else. So, after, I think, the second week, my father says, you like it? I says, yeah. He says, let's go down to town, buy a saxophone. So we go to Kimball Hall. There was a Carl Fisher's musical instruments, right downstairs on the bottom floor of Kimball Hall.
Is that like on the same place as Wabash, on Wabash?
It is. It's the Wabash. Today, that thing was given to DePaul University. That's DePaul music department now. But there were a lot of independent studios up there with teachers. They used to teach different instruments, every kind of instrument. Big building. It was the, I think, music building of Chicago. There was another one, Lyle and Healy's. There was catty corner from Kimball Hall. Kimball Hall, they call it Kimball Hall because there was also a hall in there where they gave concerts. You know, but it was the Kimball building. Anyhow, Sydney, I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Sydney something. We walked in, my father says, I want to buy a saxophone for my son. Sidney Heller is his name. You know, it's funny how these names come back after all these years. Sidney Heller, he says, I studied from Joe Ferroni. He says, oh, I know Joe Ferroni well. Sure, he comes in here often. So he says, he says, I think this is the saxophone Joe would recommend. And he brought out a Busher alto. And a couple of weeks already, I knew a lot of notes. I could play everything. All the notes. I could play everything in 2 weeks. All the notes of the instrument. And he said, boy, he said, that, you're doing pretty good. So I tried, I think, 2 saxophones, and I chose the one. So we came home, and I went for a lesson, and I surprised him. I surprised my teacher. He got mad at me. He said, well, how come you went out there without me? He says, I don't know that this is the best saxophone. He says, we're going to go there and try other instruments. So we got in his big car. I'll never forget that car. He checks the car into the... I mean, this guy wasn't making that kind of money. He was $1.50 a week lessons from me. But he checked it into the garage across the street. We walked in there with the saxophone. And he knew Sydney, and Sydney was there. And he called him, in fact. And he says, I'm coming down with my student. And he went through about 6 horns. He says, you know what? I think you chose the right one. He says, I think this is the best one.
How much did that saxophone cost?
I think it was $110. But, I mean, we bought our down payments. You know, we couldn't afford 100. My father couldn't afford that kind of money, cash. And he paid on it. I think it took a year to pay it off.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I kept that horn, and that was my horn throughout high school, up and when I came back from the Army. Naturally, I went to Paris and I got a Selmer. I came home with that. But that was my horn. And that was a beautiful horn. In fact, I became Sandy Runyon's best student while we were in Chicago. And everybody used to come and listen to me from the Army bands and everything. Because Sandy Runyon formed a band. And I played lead alto. And they said, boy, this guy, if he's playing lead alto for Sandy Runyon, who was the best teacher in the country, this guy must be really something. They used to come out and hear us play all the time. But I played that Busher. I used to make it sing pretty darn good.
And did you play with Uncle Joe a lot? Did he continue? And
Oh yeah, he used to play accordion. He used to have all this sheet music, and when I was taking lessons from Joe, every week he'd give me a tune. He'd write out the melody in my key, and I remember All the Things You Are. I didn't know what time it was. All the popular songs, but they were good songs. He'd give me right out the part. So then I'd say, you know, I want to play with my brother. He said, well, you know, you have to transpose, and he showed me step and a half, lower all the time. If he's in the key of C, then a step and a half is A, and what key is A? Because I knew all my scales. He says, what's in the A? I said, 3 sharps. He says, well, you know what to do, write out the parts. Well, that's what I did. I got a book and made all the copies of all the tunes that he had. He had this piano music to everything, all the songs. He used to buy them at Kimball Hall to learn them. Well, we started playing together. You know, I finally got tired of copying all these things, and I found out that I didn't have to copy them. I did so much copying that I could play them without copying them, transpose them. And we'd go out and play jobs. $5 a job we'd get.
while you were in high school?
While I was in high school. I think I even worked a job while I was in grammar school. But yeah, it was a little combo. We had a trio. Accordion, alto, and drums. Ralph Nielsen was on the drums. And Ralph would get some jobs and everything. I remember around Christmas I always played something, but $4 or $5 a piece we'd make. And Ralph had a car, his father's car, so we had transportation.
Yeah, he put his drums in there.
Yeah, we packed that damn car with the accordion and the drums and the alto. We'd all sit in the front seat, and the back seat would be full of instruments.
So let's talk about the family for a minute. Now, who else was in the area? So you got your grandmother, and what about?
Well, yeah. Let me say this.
Now Mildred is Tsitsi.
Yeah, she got married to Ralph Tardy. Ralph Tardy was the brother of Patsy Tardy, who's in the histories books as being a hood, a real hood. He was mixed up with all of that Al Capone era mob, and he got shot down by police eventually.
Hi, Angel.
Good morning to you. Good morning to you. With sunshine. Oh, she's gonna close the door. Hey, let's stop.
Well, a little bit more. Let's finish this story, and then we'll go. So wait. So did you know Patsy at all?
I didn't know.
He died before.
He got killed before. I think before my Uncle Ralph met my aunt. I don't remember. I didn't know. At that time, I didn't know anything. My aunt told me stories about when she was going out with him, how the cops used to chase him. Well, he got involved, you know, with the little petty things. He says they used to go over roofs and the cops were chasing them. But when he got married to my aunt, I mean, this guy became a saint. You know, he had to toe the line because my grandmother, she was a holy person. And not only that, my father took him under his wing, you know. He was, my uncle respected my father more than anybody in this world. There's a guy that goes to work hard, and he works all the time, and he was a big man. My father was a big man. They respected him because of his strength for some reason. That was the whole thing in those years. If a guy was strong, boy, he was respected. And he was a strong man. He used to pick up 100 pounds of flowers in each arm. I remember going to the thing and bring them to the bin. Well, I was in shape. I couldn't do that. But when I grew up. But he respected my father. So the guy turned out to be a hard worker and a good husband, good person, you know.
So in Nana's family, in your mother's family, there was, who was the oldest?
Jack.
Your Uncle Jack.
My Uncle Jack.
Did he live there with you?
No. They used to come all the time in the holidays because to visit their mother.
But where did they live?
But Jack lived in Clinton, Illinois, which was about 60 or 80 miles
South.
south, yeah. And they were involved with the railroad. I don't know what the heck they did, but they worked for the railroad. And then Uncle Charlie, he lived in Bloomington, near Bloomington.
He was the second child.
He was the second. Barnes was the name of this little town that he lived. No electricity, because I spent a summer there with my grandmother when we visited. Charlie had 4 boys and 4 girls, I think, my cousins. And Jack had...
Oops, okay, jump down there, get your pancakes.
I don't even remember 4, but we weren't that close. We were cousins, but we weren't that close to Jack's family. 4, I remember Deward. But Deward was not...
Butter on each one, not too much.
My Uncle Jack married this woman who had a kid. Deward was her son. And then she died. But he had kids with, what was her name now?
Not too much, honey.
She was Irish.
Yeah, now do the other one. That's enough on this one.
I'll think of it. But then he had his family. She died. Then another one died. He married another one. No.
Is this Jack?
Wait a minute. Jack married, the first one that he married died, but he had a daughter, Esther. She was the oldest one.
That's good. You want to split
Then
when I get done here?
she died and she married this Irish one. So they both had kids. Deward was, I can't think of her, I don't know why I can't think of her.
His second wife's
Yeah.
son.
Yeah. So they had that, and she died. Then he gets married. He gets married again. We didn't know her too well. I mean, she wasn't around too long. She got killed by a railroad. He came here, he come over, oh, brother-in-law, he says, it was terrible. He said, I'm going around picking up a hand and a...
Oh, jeez.
Jesus Christ. We heard that. I got sick. I was a little kid at the time.
Okay.
Anyhow, she died.
Yeah.
And you got married again to Elta. You met Elta. Maybe you didn't. No. No, you didn't meet Elta. Because Elta died. Yeah, you met. Did you meet Jackie and?
Huh?
I don't think so.
Well, you can only have half. Of the
When
rest
would I
of
have?
it.
Yeah, you met. You know what? It wasn't too long ago when we went to a wedding, and Jackie was there with his wife. This is the little. There were 2 kids he had with Elta. My Uncle Jack. Jackie and
one tablet only.
and the girl.
So when you're 4, I'll give you a whole one.
I forget
Okay?
now.
Be
See,
a little bit
my
bigger,
brother, I
okay?
think, remembers because he kept in touch. Elsie and them kept in touch. You know,
Yeah. Oh.
he's got
You mean eat a whole one?
he's got a doctorate, that Jackie.
Here.
He's and the last time I saw him, he said, "Oh, you got to come down and see." He wanted to keep close relationship with his cousins and everything.
Okay, where do you want to eat?
Working down though from your mother's family.
Yeah, all right, that's Jack. And then Charlie, he had 4 boys, and we were a little closer to them. Felix, who moved here, he just died. He was the oldest. Paulie, they all died. Paulie was the next one, was a little older than us. He died. Jeannie, he was my brother's age. He died. Billy, the smallest, he died. They all died. I don't know why. But the gals all lived. Mary, you know Mary?
Yeah.
Mary, Mary Dominic Polito. You remember them?
Yeah, I remember.
She's the oldest of the girls, and then Emily, Rosie, and Helen May. You saw Helen May.
Yeah. And then so who was next?
Of the kids,
Yeah.
that's it.
Well, I'm talking about.
That's all.
Now
My grandmother started out with, I think, 12 kids. They all died. 4 of them survived her. 4. When she died, there were 4 living.
She had 12 kids.
I
What
mean,
did the,
she had, in the First World War, she had 2 boys that got killed in the war. And then in those days, kids used to die of these diseases.
when she lived in Europe, though.
Yeah, in Italy. But that's all. She came over here with 5 kids. You know, that Evelyn died here.
3 girls and 2 boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now on your father's side.
My father's side, I only knew Francesco, which was Julius Caesar's father. He was the oldest. Stano, he was in Italy. I never met him. He was the oldest of the sons of, and his name is Pietro, my father's father. I think, you know what? I never knew my grandfather over there, or my grandmother. And he had sisters, and the brothers, I met them all, except Stano. But the women, they all stayed in Italy. So I don't know their history. Julius will have to tell you all of that.
Yeah. And who did your father come over with in Italy?
I think came over with a brother-in-law. There was a guy by the name of, they used to call him Yazud. I don't know. A brother-in-law, and I think all 3 boys came together. Francesco, and Tony. Tony was the kid. He was the youngest of them all.
And what would that? What is?
You know, I don't remember because my father used to go back to. He'd go back to Italy and come back here. I know he went to Italy when I was a little kid for like a month or something. Then come back. What?
Tony.
Tony.
Your uncle Tony.
Yeah.
Antonio.
Antonio. Yeah. He's the father of Yolanda, Marlene, and Carol Jean.
Yeah.
And he had 4 daughters. And he had a grocery store in Chicago. And he made out good. He was a butcher and everything. He sold everything. And they decided, in fact, I was on the road with Artillary, and we were in California playing the Palladium, and they moved during that time to California from Chicago. The whole family took over there. They moved to Covina, California.
And he retired.
He retired, yeah. And the girls, they all...
Now, he passed away recently, right?
Yeah, we went to see him. I think he was in his 90s. Yeah, but my Aunt Rose passed away first, a couple of years ago. And then he died, I think about a year ago, 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Who were your friends when you were a kid? Who were your best friends?
Angelo, when we went to grammar school.
Was that when you lived in Harrison?
Yeah.
You met him like in the 3rd grade?
Yeah.
How did you meet him?
Is this thing on?
Yeah.
Well, we lived about a block apart.
He's Greek. He was in that Greek part.
Yeah, Angelo was born in Greece, and he came here as a little baby. But he really didn't hang around with the Greek clan, so to speak. I think we were in the same classroom. I don't know how it was, but he wound up a half a year behind me. Maybe it was a 3A and 3B classroom. I don't remember now. But we were in the same classroom, and he used to know the bakery, so we got acquainted somehow. And we'd walk to school. Every morning we'd walk to school. And we became pretty close. And in fact, I'm 75 and he's almost 75. And we still correspond. He's got a place in Florida on the Keys. And he goes there in winter. Yeah, in fact, I talked to him about 2 weeks ago. He was back home, Chicago. He still lives in Chicago area, one of the suburbs. I think Arlington Heights.
How about Uncle Joe? Did he have a close friend?
Yeah, he had a friend named Kalo. He played saxophone. In fact, he played saxophone in grammar school, and Uncle Joe played accordion, and they were on stage, and that kind of sold me on the saxophone too. And he was like a year and a half, 2 years older than me. But by the time we got to high school, he fell a little bit behind in his playing, and he wound up taking lessons from me by the time he graduated. But yeah, Kalo was Joe's best friend. In fact, he keeps in close contact with him.
How do you spell Kalo?
Kaylo. But in Italian, it's a different name, I think. Kalo Nanni. And his parents were from Tuscany. Okay? So he spoke the northern Italian, and we spoke the dialect southern Italian.
Not much in between, huh?
Yeah, we understood each other.
When you went to high school and you moved from one place to another, you didn't change high schools.
No, I stayed. Well, we never really moved that far. From the store to the house was only a couple of blocks, 2-3 blocks.
And how did you meet Leroy?
I met Leroy in high school, in the band.
Was he your friend or Uncle Joe's friend more?
Well, both of our friends. We were all in the band. Even Uncle Joe was in the band. He played accordion, but he used to play solos, and then he learned how to play. I taught him how to play baritone sax, and for a while he played baritone sax in the high school band, and that's how we became acquainted with Leroy. He was first trumpet in the band when we graduated, and I was first saxophone. And of course, Uncle Joe had graduated already, but we remained friends. I went into the service. He was a little younger than me, so he missed it during the war. And when I got out, he was going to DePaul University. And I started school at some other quack place for about one semester, and I thought I wasn't learning anything, so he says, come to DePaul. So I inquired. I talked to a counselor. I said, look, I don't want to come here to get a degree. I just want to advance myself. I says, I'm not going to take any Harmony 1, Harmony 2. I know all of that stuff. So I went for one semester and I took what I wanted. And the counselor called me in. He said, look, we're going to give you an entrance exam and we'll place you where you belong. So they did. And they skipped ear training 1, 2, and 3, I think, and Harmony 1 and 2, and they placed me. But I had to make up the credits. And in place of those credits, I took advanced courses like orchestration, advanced harmonies and different subjects, but I had to make up. And he says, and keep going until you get a degree. So I agreed. And I got my degree in 3 years, going summer and winter.
So when you went in there, they made you. Did you decide almost right away to get your education degree? Is that right away?
Yeah, because the counselor said, "Look, here's what you've got." After about 2 years, these are the credits you've got, and you may as well go for an education degree because you might want to use it someday. And he was right. Yeah. I finally did use it. I became a teacher.
So when you went in there, what?
Well, I graduated and I went on the road. I went on the road with Ralph Marteri. I graduated in 1950 and I joined his band 52. Yeah, I believe it was 1952. And I stayed with them several years, on and off. about 7 years. I'd get tired of the road and take off. Then I'd join the band again. But you want to know about the Army.
Well, before that, yeah, let's go back to the Army. You were in high school.
When I graduated high school.
But before you graduated, you were playing.
I was playing professionally, yeah. I was playing professionally. Sandy Runyon had a band. And Billy, a gal, singer and trumpet player, was playing with Woody Herman at the time. And this Jack Archer was her manager. And he says, you should have a band. And Sandy naturally couldn't go on the road. He was playing the Chicago Theater at the time. He was teaching. And so he sold his library and the band to Billy Rogers. And we were on the road, most of us in high school. The reason why high school players were professionals then is because all the pros were drafted. No one was around, so the most talented high school students played real jobs. And I was jobbing during that time. I'd get calls. Sandy Runyon always recommended me for other jobs. But then when the band started rolling with Billy Rogers, we were playing weekends. And boy, that was rough. We'd go out Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'd roll in at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I never missed a day of school. I went right to school. But some of the first, second classes, I'd doze off a little bit. But those were hard. Anyhow, I made a little name for myself. And I met this one arranger who was at Fort Sheridan, Bob Anderson. And he said, look, when you're ready to go into this, oh, I got to tell you this. There was a guy that heard me. His name was Petrullo, Caesar Petrullo. He had the CBS orchestra. That was one of the top jobs. And he told Sonny, he said, look, I want that kid. Because I used to transpose in different keys. I could do a lot of things. So Sandy Runyon says, you can't have him. He says, why? He says, because he's being drafted. Anyhow, I was drafted, but meeting Bob Anderson, because he knew Sandy Runyon's band, said, look, when you're ready, you get your papers. Meanwhile, he said, go see this Captain Waters downtown. So I went to see him. This was like maybe March.
After you got your draft papers?
No, this is before I got my draft papers. This is about March, when I became 18. March 14th, I was 18 years old. I went to see him. And he says, don't worry about a thing. Andy told me all about you. He says, when you get your papers, give me a buzz. Gave me his number. So I got my papers, ready to go. I called him. He says, you know what? Can't do anything for you. Meanwhile, the Normandy invasion happened in June. And everybody that went into the service, he said, is going into the infantry. You don't even have a choice anymore. He says, and I'm sorry, but that's it. And that's the way it wound up. I wound up in the infantry in Arkansas, Camp Robinson, Arkansas, the most miserable place in the world. It was hot. I hated everything. Couldn't blow my horn. In fact, I never had my horn. I carried my mouthpiece with me. And I used to, every once in a while, go outside and go toot with the mouthpiece. But there was nothing. Anyhow, we got, and I'm always writing letters. Get me in the band, get me in the band. In fact, they called me in, the office called me in one time. They said, you know what? You're qualified for Officers Candidate School. I says, Officers Candidate School? I says, I don't even want to be in this Army Officers Candidate School. I says, get me in a band. Forget it. So my 16th basic training was 17 weeks. On my 16th week, we were out in the field, bivouac they called it. And we had to pitch pup tents. And each of us carried a half of a pup tent. So there's two guys in a pup tent. His half and your half, you make a pup tent. And some guy comes calling, Gagliardi! We're out in the field nowhere. And I think it was the next 2 or 3 days, we were going to make that 20-mile hike back. And I used to get blisters on my feet. I dreaded that. I says, yeah, I'm Gagliardi. Says, get your stuff together and you're on orders. He says, get your stuff together and get in the truck. I says, where am I going? He said, why do I know? Get your stuff together. So I took half of my tent. Again, that I tented with wasn't around. He didn't know what happened. And I don't know what happened to him ever since. Anyhow, I got in the truck and I'm thinking, oh man, I'm going to a band. I'm in that truck in the back all by myself and I'm talking to myself, boy, I'm happy and everything. Anyhow, I get in there and they says, all right, get your stuff, we're going to take you to the train. I got all of my equipment, went to the train, and I'm thinking, all this time I'm going into a band. We were on that damn train 3-4 days. Now, this is Arkansas. We wound up in North Carolina, which isn't that far. But the troop trains used to take that long. You stop, sometimes you stop for 6 hours. Yeah, we finally got there. And they called my name, this one sergeant. I said, yeah. I said, how's the band? The guy says, what band? I says, I'm going to a band. He says, you're in the artillery, not the band. I said, my heart, oh, boy, my heart fell down. Another 11 weeks of training. But by that time, I gave up with the band business. And I had a furlough. They call it, not a furlough, but delay en route. I think it was 10 days. Went home and got on the train, went to New Jersey, on the Queen Elizabeth, wound up in England. Miserable England. Southampton, England. I'll tell you a little story about England. Everybody wasn't used to, we Americans weren't used to this weather. The temperature was only about 30 degrees, not that cold, but we were in this tent that held about 12 people. And we're all freezing in these stupid sleeping bags that they gave us. It was narrow at the feet and wider at the shoulder, and there was no wool inside of it. I was shivering, and I heard a you dirty mother, you. And everybody broke up laughing. So we got up, there was a big fire. They had a big fire in a barrel. And we gathered around that barrel and trying to keep warm. And this, oh, I got to tell you about this guy. from Boston, another Dago. He says, you know what George Washington said to the Indians when he was crossing the Delaware? I says, shit. I start laughing. I says, what? I said, George Washington and the Indians. He says, Van ragazza de freddo, which means it's cold out here. So I thought that in itself was funny. But then after I stopped laughing, he says, yeah, but you know what the Indian said? He turns around and he says, cazzo, buongiorno parla italiano. Even you can speak Italian. Oh, I thought that was the funniest joke. Anyhow, we wound up on one of those flat-bottom boats going across the English Channel. And we wound up in Le Havre, France. And boy, I never saw anything. Everything was pulverized. All the buildings, terrible. But I wasn't assigned yet to anybody. So here they sent these troops here and there. I wound up with the 106th Infantry Division, but only with the artillery. Artillery, 155 howitzers. I knew nothing about it. I trained on the 105 howitzers. But I was just a helper. I didn't have to know anything about it. And we wound up in Saint-Quentin, France. First place. And we were all living in a building that it used to be, they used to sew things in there. Like a tailor shop. With this group that I was in. This artillery group. And we stayed there a couple of days. Got on this big cat. They call it a cat. It was a tractor. And we rode into Germany with this pulling of this big howitzer. And now this is around, I don't know, February, March of 1945. Yeah. The war was still going on. And it was no time. We were in Heilbronn, Germany, which is near Heidelberg. In fact, we went to Heidelberg for some reason there, and I picked up from the Germans an Albert System clarinet. What did I do with that clarinet? I forgot.
It used to be in a crawl space. I don't know. Back in Lombard, it was in a crawl space.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to that clarinet. I think I gave it to somebody. I don't know. Anyhow, I picked that clarinet up because it was just laying around. And I picked up a helmet for souvenirs. Anyhow, we get back to camp. And now here's, wait a minute, here's, before we got to that city, yeah, before we got to that city, this is what happened. We're going about 40 miles an hour down the road, chasing the Germans, trying to catch up with the Germans, and there's a bunch of guys. They're all with their hands up. 100,000. They wound up. About 100,000. They were giving up. They didn't want to fight anymore. So, since we were in the rear with this artillery, we had to take care of them. So they'd strung this barbed wire. And that was their cage at first. And we'd stand guard. Well, stand guard and fed them K rations, C rations.
This was in Germany, huh?
In Germany, yeah. But it was near this, not too far from this Heilbronn. See, I got ahead of myself. And what we did is occupied, I don't know how, but we occupied houses and we all lived in a house of some kind, maybe 4 or 5 in a house. And we threw our sleeping bags on the ground and we slept in there. At least it was warm. Before that, we were sleeping on the ground in pup tents and hear those missiles going over our heads. Boy, that was something. But I never really got into hand-to-hand combat with it, anybody. That was, and that was the remainder, right there, of the war. Because on May 8th, although we knew it, the war was ending. It was officially ended. And we had the German prisoners themselves string up this cage with barbed wire, and they were organized. They got all their sergeants together, and there were the troops and everything, and they were happy to be at least in this cage.
What about that guy who stole your boots?
No, this is way later. But listen to this story.
Well, yeah.
I hadn't played my horn. The last time I blew it when I was at home, before Christmas. Was it before? Yeah. I blew it for a little bit, and I found out that I can still play because I hadn't blown it for about 6 months. And we were staying at these homes. There was a guy by the name of Joe Gargano, and he was the older guy. So that the captain, everybody had respect because of his age, but he was a friend of mine. We stayed together in the same house. He was in the office and he heard, boy, you know, the jazz tenor player comes in, the leader comes in, he says, our jazz tenor player is sick and we got a concert to give to you guys tonight, and we haven't got a saxophone player. So Joe Gargano says, wait a minute, we got the best saxophone player. And because I had showed him a picture in downbeat of me when I was, he says, we got a guy that can play anything. So, me, I never played tenor, but I could play jazz. And they said, well, here's the tenor. They had a tenor for me, a mouthpiece, everything, the strap. And I'm halted a little bit before playing the concert. And here I'm sitting in the jazz tenor, and every other number is a jazz solo. And I got up and played. And every time I played, boy, that soldiers were, they loved it. They thought I was the greatest. And you know, I did all right. Because I knew all my chords and everything was written. Played a lot of those Glenn Miller things, where the tenor doubled the clarinet lead. And I did well. And after that, we had a jam session. God let me use this alto. And I was out there for about 5 hours with a piano player and a bass player. And boy, so I said, boy, I want to play. I want to play. What they did is shortly after, disorganized or took apart this unit because no more war. We got to get guys to go to the CBI. That's China, India, Burma, the South Pacific. So they broke us up, and I wound up in Marseille, Calais, France, which was near Marseille. That's the southern part. Get on a boat, get our winter clothes changed to the khakis, which they wore in warm weather. And I'm in this big pump tent, we're all disgusted. And they were split away from everybody. I didn't know anybody. But you meet people. You meet other soldiers, you make friends. Anyhow, we were in a mess line, ready to go, getting, Oh, I got to tell you about the Hanjekeef. This one black guy, he says, he was a quartermaster, that's what they were. He says, you got 2 pairs of what do you call them, the heavy pants, this and that, and then he says, you got 3 Hanjekeefs. I says, no, I says, I don't think so. He said, yeah, oh yeah, you got 3 Hanjekeefs. I said, what are they? He said, don't you know, man? He says, blow your nose. He meant handkerchiefs. But that I remember that because that was funny. Anyhow, we were waiting in this mess line, and I heard, anybody play musical instrument show up at the, what do they call that? I forget the name of that. Anyhow, the department that used to have the arts and everything, special service. So I'm waiting in this line, which was like 2 blocks long, and I'm about 4th or 5th from getting served. And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if I should leave this line, because they said now. So I decided, well, okay, I can always get back in line. I think I'll go see what they want. The guy says, you play an instrument? Yeah. Play saxophone. We need a lead alto sax. You know anything about that? I said, that's my specialty. He says, look, we got a job tonight, Aixon Province. It was a town about 20 miles away from where I was. It was a neat town. No soldiers. It was, this building had housed all the Red Cross women. And it was an officers club at night. And that's what we were playing for. Yeah, to make a long story short, by the end of the night, they made me leader. These guys were real non-professionals. And they said, look, if you want to stay here, we can put a hold on you. I said, you kidding? Yeah, I'll take it. I'm in a band. They put a hold on me. But my job, in the Army, you gotta have a job. You gotta do something. Playing music. In fact, we got paid $5 for playing those officers' jobs. And my job, though, during the day, I stayed at this this camp, Army camp, was delivering the Stars and Stripes paper to, different units, because there were a lot of units then. And I'd separate them into how many papers per unit. Some would take 10, some would take 20, some whatever it was. And that was my job during the day. The rest of the day, that's it, I rested. And at night, we'd go to the officers' club and play. So all the guys that I was with, they left already. They had gone, they got on the boat and went somewhere. And I stayed. I got together. Oh, I know what happened. We were playing this officers club, and there was this captain that was in charge of it. He was Italian. And he thought, boy, what a band. The band stunk. But he thought that band was great. He says, you know what? He says, you're from Chicago. He said, I'm going to look you up, because I'm from California and I'm opening up a nightclub. He says, I want to hire you. Which I thought to myself, that's a lot of baloney anyhow. But he really liked me. And he said, hey, I got an idea. Where are you guys staying? We're staying at this Captain Callis. He says, you want to move into this hotel? Well, you know, in Callis, we were still sleeping in those bunks.
What is that, Calais or Calais?
Calais, C-A-L-A-S, is Calais.
No, that's Calais.
I don't know, in French, I think it was. Yeah, I always call it Callis. I don't know. Anyhow, we moved to Aix-en-Provence, this building. In fact, this building was a special building. It had these natural waters.
Springs.
The springs that people used to come for to get
Healing.
treatments.
Yeah.
They'd soak in these waters and everything. Well, I never. Hey, what did I need it for? I was a young guy. We moved into this hotel, and I had my own room. I couldn't believe it. We were living like gentlemen. And our job was strictly to play at night. But that came to an end. They had to break up.
Was the war over in Germany at that
The war was over. The war was over. It was during shortly after. You know, I'm talking, right now I'm talking after May. Maybe during May and June. It sounds long, but I was very short time in each place. But they said they were going to give this hotel, they was going to all break up back to the civilians, whoever had it. I guess the army rented it from them in France, and they used it. But that was going to be all done away with. All right, so the place was, well, you know what? There's an authorized band, 116th band in Marseille. By the way, Chico was in this group. And Chico originally played bass. And the leader, the original leader of this little group was a piano player. And he got discharged. He was many years. He had enough points to get out. And then Chico switched to piano. All right, there were about 8 of us or so, but these guys were in the service a long time. They one by one, they accumulated enough points to get out, but I was still a long way off. You needed, I think up to, at the time, 40 points, and you got 1 point for each month in the service, and 2 points in the service in the States, 2 points for being overseas, and I had been overseas over a year. No, not over a year. Yeah. Oh, my total overseas was 1.5 years. Anyhow, I was up to about 32 points, I think. And guys, when you reach 34, so I had some time to go. And you got, oh, I know, you got, the reason why I got so many points is I got 2 battle stars. And they were 5 points each. So I got 10 extra points there.
What battle stars for which?
For when I was in the war. I was in the battle zones.
Yeah, when you were in the infantry.
When I was in the artillery.
In the artillery.
Yeah. All right, so now they said, you guys want to go there? What else? You know, and we went to Marseille, and again, we were in, what, a bunch of guys and everything. We didn't, I mean, we had it made over there, but I accepted it. We were in a big room with the whole band. This was a bigger band. But these guys, we played a few jobs, and pretty soon this one guy says, look at, and this one guy called me Gag. He says, why don't we have Gag count off the tempos? I mean, we're all mixed up around here. He seems to know what's going on. So they made me the leader on that one too. But this guy, this one guy was a promoter. We were in Marseille, and that thing was about to break up too. So this guy used to write letters all over, and Nice and Cannes, he wrote them to the Red Cross. He says, you want our band? So you got our band to play over there for a couple of days. They drove us there with trucks, and I saw this. I mean, this is paradise, you know, with the sand and the warm weather and everything. It's a resort area. Anyhow, we played a couple of days. We went back, and then he wrote, he says, you know, the place of debarkation is Le Havre, France. He says, let's see if I can get the band out there. Because we were approaching our numbers to be discharged. And sure enough, he said, yeah, come on out. We got, I don't know how he manipulated all this stuff.
And Chico was in that.
Chico was in before me. Chico was a year older than me. And yeah, he was in that, but he got, no, we separated there. I don't know how we separated, but we separated there in Marseille. But we kept in touch by mail. Anyhow, we wound up in Le Havre there, and there was really nothing. We were a band, but there was not too many jobs. Maybe about 2-3 jobs a week that we played there. We were just waiting our time, that's all. And the band was really, they're getting almost nothing because they were being discharged. And but this guy says, hey, you know what, you're the leader. You're only a PFC. We're going to put in for corporal. Yeah, Lieutenant signs it, I'm a corporal. A week later he says, that's not enough. We're going to make you sergeant. Lieutenant signs it, I'm a sergeant. All this time I was a buck private that did a PFC. Anyhow, I used to write myself passes to go to Paris. From Le Havre to Paris wasn't too far. And how you get there is you just hitch a ride with one of the GI trucks. There was always a ride out there. And boy, I got to go to the publishing houses. I got to go see Maurice Selmer. And I bought myself a Selmer saxophone. And he said, you're going to come next week. He says, I got a brand new saxophone. He says, I'm going to have it. Because they used to make all the parts and then piece them together. He says, it's different, completely different. He says, you come next week and I'll have it for you. Only $110 bucks, I think. So I went back to camp. I said, boy, I can't wait until next week. What's laying on my bed? My papers. You're going to the States. So I said, well, listen, I've been waiting for this. I can't. But there was a guy, another kid who just joined the band, a half-assed drummer. He says, oh, I'll take care of everything for you. I'll go to Paris, get that horn, I'll ship it to you, and everything. And I left this guy. By then, I had accumulated a shortwave radio, a German George shortwave radio. I had a foam rubber mattress. No one had any of that stuff. I left it to him for doing me this favor. I left him the money. I left him money to ship it. Never heard from this guy again.
He took it.
I didn't know him, I didn't know his name, I didn't know anything. But I had to trust somebody. Anyhow, I never got that new horn.
What was the horn model?
It was balanced action. They called the other ones balanced actions too, but this was a balanced action with the 3500 series or something. That was the serial number. And I never really saw that horn. It never reached the States for 2 years after that. And Jack Galo had one. And the whole right hand was slanted, just like Maurice Selmer told me. He says, different. With the fingers were different, so you could play faster. But I really didn't like it, as well as I was used to mine. Anyhow, got to the States, and got discharged. Oh, I know what you wanted me to get to. While we were there in Le Havre, we were staying in one of these 12-men tents, and they had a whole row of them. The band was staying in one of them. And we played a job once. Oh, I had met a lieutenant there. And I said, boy, I had those great big combat boots. I says, look at these ugly looking boots. I says, I'm going to be discharged. I said, I got to go home with those darn things? He says, I'll get you a pair at the officers club. And he got me these brown, beautiful, to me they were gorgeous, Oxford. They were officer shoes. So I never wore them. Polished them every day, kept them under my bed. One day, we come home from one of these jobs, the shoes were gone. And these old, raggedy shoes were left. I says, oh. I said, what in the hell? Someone stole my shoes, I've left them. So since we didn't work every night, I said, I'm gonna, and all of the tents, like the tent next to us was empty, and then and the sides were rolled up to the halfway part. So I said, I let down. I said, I'm gonna wait and see. I waited, nothing. I waited again another night. I saw a guy going in one tent and out. One tent, because everybody was doing something. I don't know where everybody was, but they were doing something. That the tents were empty. This guy used to go into all the empty tents. He knew that there was no one in there. Come in, go out, come in. I said, there's the guy. I had a club. So I waited until he went to our tent, and there was no way out, no back. So I ran there, and I grabbed him, and I had this club. I said, what are you doing there? He was a PW. PW with privileges, you know.
German prisoner.
Yeah. No, but he wasn't a German prisoner. He was somehow he was a Polish prisoner. I know Poland was on our side, but he was Polish. So I grabbed him, and I looked at him, and then I looked down, and he's wearing my shoes. Oh, I threw the club down, and I gave this guy a slap in the face, and I knocked him out with a slap. But at that time, I was in good shape. I was able to do 100 push-ups on each arm. I used to exercise every day. Always kept in good shape. And not only that, I grabbed this guy by the neck. And there were a couple of the band guys there, and they said, oh, you're going to get court-martialed. He's a PW. I gave a damn list. I dragged him. First of all, I took my shoes off. And I have him put his shoes on, and I dragged him all the way out. He was stunned, you know, yet, and to the tent, and they said, "We'll take care of him. We'll take care of him." I don't know what happened. They didn't take care of anything. I don't think, but I did get my shoes back. Hey, I got to go home with a nice pair of shoes. And I got discharged, and that's it.
So when you got home, tell me about the Indian guy, your shadow.
Well, that's when I first went in. When I first went in the Army, I was at Fort Sheridan, and this guy is tagging along all the time with me. And I'm wondering why. This guy was an Indian. And I'm wondering why this guy picks me, you know. So he says to me, "We got to stick together." I says, "Yeah?" I says, "How come?" He says, "How come? We're both Indians." I says, "I'm not an Indian." I says, "I'm Italian." I was insulted. So that guy, I never saw him again. He left me. You know, there's so many stories that I keep on forgetting. But here we've jumped from year to year, coming back.
Yeah, so when you got back home and you went into school, you went to that one small college first?
Yeah, I went to there were a lot of phony schools that cropped up. They called this one the Cosmopolitan College. And it was downtown, and it was in Kimball Hall. Well, you know, I go to a harmony class over there, and they're teaching you scales and chords, and I was so far above that. And the guy gives me an A. I said, "So what am I going to do with this?" "Well, it's not an accredited college." So, I mean, I couldn't transfer any credits or anything. And 6 months I was there.
Then you went to DePaul.
Yeah, I said, "Yeah, I'm not learning anything here." Oh, I'll tell you why I did go there. Sammy Runyon was affiliated with them, and he gave lessons. So, under the GI Bill of Rights, which government paid, I wasn't paying anything for this. So, I took lessons from Sammy Runyon for nothing.
Yeah.
And that was the main thing. And I also studied clarinet from kind of a half-assed teacher. I didn't learn anything from him. So I says, I really don't need any more lessons from Sammy, because by that time I played things that were way beyond him. I brought all these books back from Paris, real hard things that weren't even in this country. So I stopped saxophone with him. And then when I went to DePaul, all my instruments that I studied clarinet from Jerry Stowell, was from the symphony.
Jerry Stoll?
Jerry Stoll. What did I say?
Stowell.
Stoll. His name is Stoll. Emolek on flute. And eventually I studied from, I forget his name, I studied cello. He was in the symphony, but retired from the symphony. Then he became contractor at Schubert Theater, which is pretty good. And this guy, he told me to throw all the instruments away and study cello. That's my instrument. Anyhow, then I studied trumpet, but you know who gave me lessons? Who gave me my tests? Herseth, Schilke. They were all on staff. these trumpet players from Jacobus from the opera. And of course, they knew Jerry, and I used to kid with them. I'd come in there for my lesson, and I'd fool around a little bit, you know. They
Versus Shoki and who?
Another trumpet teacher that was there. There were, I don't know. The other guy was not in the symphony. Those two guys were in the symphony. There was another brass teacher that sat in on the. That's what you did at the end of the year. If on every instrument you had to go play something for
A jury?
yeah, like a jury. And then you go out and they talk it over and say, well, what grade do we give this guy? You know, it was that kind of a thing. But, you know, your teacher has a lot, like I studied clarinet from Jerry, and the other clarinet teacher sat in there, but Jerry says, if Jerry says, look, I know the student, maybe he didn't play as well now as he does, he deserves whatever, you know. It's that kind of a test. It was not a written test, it was a performance test.
And then you got out of DePaul. And then you went on
You
the
know
road.
what, I'll tell you, when you get out of DePaul, you had to take, at the time, comprehensive examination. And I had a job when it was offered. So I said, well, can I take it some other time? They said, well, the only other time is when the masters take theirs. I said, well, that's all right, I'll take it with them. I said, I don't care. Leroy was one of the masters. He was going for his master's at the time, while I was going for my bachelor's. And I took the test, and I wound up second highest even on the masters, while Priest wound up like, he had a 96 and I had a 95 total. And the guy that gave us the test, he says, you a jazz musician? I said, yeah. He says, that's why you got a good ear. Because, you know, they played these things and you had to like a 4-part harmony. And they play it on the piano. You had a chance. And then the next chord, so on.
I'm gonna go get my angel.
Oh yeah. That's it, we got enough.
Yeah.
Up the lazy river by the old mill run, lazy river in the noonday sun. You linger in the shade of a kind old tree. Throw away your troubles, dream a dream with me. Up the lazy river where that robin song wakes a bright new morning, where we just loaf along. Blue skies up above, everyone's in love. Up the lazy river, how happy we could be. Up the lazy river with me. The lazy river where that old robin song wakes a bright new morning, where we just loaf along. Blue skies up above, everyone's in love. Up the lazy river, how happy we could be. up the lazy river with me. Lazy river by the old mill run, lazy river in the noonday sun. Linger in the shade of a kind old tree, throw away your troubles, dream a dream with me. Lazy river where the robin's song wakes a bright new morning, we just love along. Blue skies up above, everyone's in love. Oh, that lazy river, hey, you hold a river. Oh, that lazy river with
me. Because we had our friends in.
I will.
No, I'm just saying there's a camera here.
Oh,
We got a big fat head.
Well, look where I'm pointing.
I did at the door.
The bell rings. We're in our seats. The bell used to ring at 1:45. I'll never forget. Then you line up, and boy, you line up like military style in that school.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, I'm talking about.
That's all. The
9,
8, 9. You're in the canvas.
Well, you know, I need to get over there.
Go ahead. Just walk across.
Well, don't point at me.
Don't linger.
Jesus, he points. Like I'm supposed to.
Well, you're supposed to remember from yesterday.
Oh.
Hey, that was on the tape. He's going to be giving to your grandkids and great grandkids.
All right, so.